BBC. Mr. Lavrov, two questions about the Ukraine. To what extent the Ukrainian problem is an irritant in the relations between Moscow and your European colleagues? And the second question, it is frequently said that the outcome of this confrontation could be the splitted Ukraine. Is this prospect realistic one? I would not indulge in provocational discussions of the split of the Ukraine. We are doing everything what it takes to avoid it, to stabilize the situation. And we will continue on this path. Ukraine is our neighbor, is our partner, is our friend and brother. And one should not be ambiguous here. We are convinced that the domestic problems of any state should be solved through the dialogue based on constitutional and legal provisions. I do not know who takes offense from us for the events in the Ukraine, but we would prefer that several European colleagues would not be so outright, would not be so unceremonial about the Ukrainian events. We do not approve of them taking part in the Maidan events, in anti-governmental protests, especially the representatives of the country who do not have diplomatic relations with the Ukraine. Of course, you are following the events there on the TV. You know how it started. In the government buildings, militants persisted for several weeks. Can it happen in any of the countries of the European Union? No. It wouldn't be tolerated, and now the fires, the combats, Molotov cocktails, improvised explosive devices, it's a horror. It violates all the European behavior standards, and I hope that the leaders of the opposition will do something about it, because some of their calls show that the situation is going under control. We have the information that the situation is incentivized from abroad, but it turns out that those incentives do not take into account the interests of the opposition itself. They try to bring about violence. I do not know if something similar happens in the European countries. Nobody doubts the need for firm measures to prevent violence, to eliminate violence and protests, while now the countries from abroad are calling for making conclusions out of that. Our colleagues at the Kiev session of the OSCE Minister Council, our colleagues tried to persuade us to listen to the people's voice of the Ukraine. If not, the chaos will ensue in the Ukraine. We are not interested in that chaos. Our interests lie in the stability in the Ukraine. There are a lot of links between us, economic, cultural, spiritual links. We do not want to pour oil into the fire that somebody trying to burn there. What are the reasons of those protests? The government made a decision not to sign and not to initial at the moment documents with the European Union. And what ensued? You know that the European Union also witnesses several protests. For example, in Greece, there were protests for coming out of the European Union. In other countries, Eurosceptics are forming political parties, what stand should they take against them? Where is the freedom of expression? Our colleagues from Estonia were asking us, while their neighbor Latvia introduced euro without any referendum, while the survey of the public opinion, only 8% of the population were advocating for that, while the others were against that. So what is to be done about it? Take to the streets and set fire to the governmental buildings. So we are ready to discuss with the European Union about the measures that will eliminate the policies of setting dividing lines. We are trying to overcome the policies which says either you are with us or you are against us. Several European politicians are promoting such approach. When the Ukrainians, and their Prime Minister Nikolai Azarov said that they propose to hold tri-party consultations, Russia, Ukraine, and the European Union. President Putin said that we stand ready for that, but the European Union was categorically against that, and it is still against that. Why? Nobody explains that. We will hold a summit with the European Union in the end of January, and it would be very interesting to listen to their reasons, to their reasoning. So we are very concerned about the developments in the Ukraine, and we call for all the parties to solve the emerged problems through dialogue only, based on the constitution and legal provisions of the Ukraine.